The girl didn't make a sound when he first saw her. She stood too still for a child. Not frozen in fear, just quiet in a way that didn't belong on that street. Traffic moved, horns somewhere far off, a bus groaning at the corner. But around her, it felt like everything had been turned down. Marcus slowed without meaning to, one hand still on the wheel, the other resting against the edge of the window. Fingers darkened from a shift that hadn't ended yet. She looked at him. Not past him. Not through him. At him. There was something wrong in that look. Not broken. Not lost. Just waiting. He didn't know why he stopped the truck. He didn't know why he got out. He only knew later that if he had kept driving, things would have stayed the same. And that somehow felt worse. The truck idled behind him, louder now that he was outside it. Marcus didn't turn it off. He rarely did unless he had to. Something about the constant engine noise helped him think less. Or maybe it just filled space that would otherwise feel too open. The girl hadn't moved. Up close, she looked younger than he first thought. Maybe 7, maybe 8. Hard to tell. Her clothes were clean in a way that didn't match the street-soft fabric, pale colors, nothing worn down at the edges. Her shoes didn't have dust on them. She wasn't from around here. Marcus glanced once over his shoulder, quick. The block wasn't empty, but no one was paying attention. A man across the street smoked with his back turned. Someone shut a car door farther down. Life was moving, just not here. "You lost?" he asked. His voice came out rougher than he intended. It usually did after a long shift. The girl blinked. Slow. Then nothing. No nod. No shake of the head. Just that same steady look. Marcus waited a second. Then another. He shifted his weight, boots scraping lightly against the pavement. The smell from the truck drifted toward him, old food, damp paper, something sour he'd stopped noticing hours ago. "You got someone with you?" He tried again. Still nothing. He noticed then her hands, held close to her sides, not fidgeting, not clenched. Just still. Kids usually moved. Even quiet ones. They tapped their feet, picked at something, looked around. She didn't. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. He could feel the heat building under his collar. The sun wasn't strong, but it didn't need to be. He wasn't good with kids. Never had been, even before. He glanced down the street again, this time slower, looking for someone watching. A parent. A nanny. Anyone who might step in and make this not his problem. No one did. The girl shifted her gaze, slightly. Not away, just to his face, like she was checking something. Then back to his eyes. It wasn't curiosity. It felt closer to recognition, but that didn't make sense. Marcus cleared his throat. "Okay," he said, more to himself than to her. "All right." He crouched down a little, not all the way. Just enough to not be standing over her. "What's your name?" "Nothing." The pause stretched. He nodded once, slow, like she had answered something he understood. "All right," he repeated. His hand rested on his knee. He noticed a small tear in his glove. Didn't remember when it happened. "You don't talk?" he asked. The words sat there. The girl didn't react. No offense. No discomfort. Just that same quiet. Marcus exhaled through his nose. It wasn't frustration exactly, just a feeling that he was missing something simple. He stood back up, slower this time. "Okay," he said again, softer. A car passed at the end of the block. The sound rolled in, then faded. He looked down at her shoes. Too clean. He looked at the buildings around them. Older brick. Faded paint. Nothing that matched the way she looked. "You live around here?" he asked. He didn't expect an answer. He didn't get one. For a moment, he considered just walking back to the truck. Getting in. Driving off. Calling it in, maybe. Let someone else deal with it. That would have been easier. Cleaner. But he didn't move. Instead, he stepped to the side and looked both ways down the street again. This time, with more intention, like he was already responsible. Still no one. When he turned back, the girl hadn't shifted at all. It made something tighten in his chest. Not sharp, just there. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said almost under his breath. She didn't respond. Of course she didn't. Marcus let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but without any humor. "All right," he said. He wiped his hands against his pants, more out of habit than need. Then he did something he didn't fully think through. "Come on," he said, nodding his head down the street. "Let's find where you belong." The words felt strange as soon as he said them. Too certain. He took a step, then stopped, waited. The girl didn't move right away. For a second, he thought that was it. That she'd stay there and he'd be left standing like an idiot, talking to himself in the middle of the street. But then, she stepped forward. Small, careful, not hesitant, just measured. Marcus watched her for a second, like he was making sure it was real. Then he turned and started walking. Slow enough that she could keep up. He didn't look back immediately. Didn't want to make it feel like he was checking. But after a few steps, he glanced over his shoulder anyway. She was there. Same pace. Same quiet. He nodded once to himself. They walked like that for a bit. No words. Just the sound of his boots and the softer steps behind him. He tried to think. About what he was doing. About what he should be doing. Nothing settled. "You got family nearby?" he asked after a while, not turning around. No answer. He expected that. Still felt the absence of it. He passed a corner and slowed, scanning again, looking for anything familiar. A building that didn't belong. Something cleaner, newer. He noticed then how the street started to change, subtle at first. The buildings spaced out more. The sidewalks cleaner. Fewer broken windows. Different kind of quiet. He hadn't planned this direction. It just happened. He stopped at the edge of the next block. Turned around fully this time. The girl stopped too, a step behind him. Up close again, he noticed her eyes more clearly. Not wide, not scared. Just steady. Waiting. For what? He didn't know. Marcus shifted his weight. "You see anything?" he asked, gesturing lightly around them. "Look familiar." She followed his hand with her eyes, then looked back at him. No change. He exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. He rubbed his jaw, feeling the rough stubble there. This was getting complicated. Not in a big way, just enough to be uncomfortable. He thought about calling someone again, but something held him. Maybe it was the way she stayed so still, like she trusted the space she was in, even if it didn't make sense. Maybe it was something else. He didn't name it. Instead, he turned slightly, scanning the houses now. Larger, cleaner, gates on some of them. One of them stood out, not because it was bigger, because it felt closed off in a different way. Marcus looked at it a second longer than the others. Then back at the girl. Her gaze had shifted. Not to him, to that house. It was the first time she had looked at something with intent. Marcus followed her line of sight again. The house didn't change. Still quiet, still distant behind its gate. But something about it settled the air between them. Marcus nodded once. "All right," he said. Quieter now. And this time, he didn't need to guess where to go next. The gate wasn't locked. Marcus noticed that before anything else. It sat slightly open, just enough to suggest someone had passed through not long ago, but hadn't bothered to close it all the way. He paused at the edge of the driveway. Didn't step in yet. The girl stopped beside him this time, not behind. Close enough that he could hear her breathing light even. Like none of this felt unusual to her. Marcus looked down at her for a second. "You live here?" he asked. She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Her eyes stayed on the house. That was enough. Marcus pushed the gate open with one hand. It gave easily, a soft metal sound that carried farther than he expected. He winced a little, out of habit more than concern. The driveway was clean, no cracks, no loose gravel. Everything about the place felt maintained in a way he didn't see often. He walked slowly, not because he was unsure, just because something about rushing would have felt wrong here. Behind him, her footsteps kept the same quiet rhythm. No hesitation. He reached the front door and stopped. Up close, the house felt even more still. No sound from inside. No movement behind the windows. Curtains drawn just enough to block any clear view. Marcus raised his hand, then lowered it again. He wasn't sure why. He glanced down at the girl. She was watching the door, not anxious, not eager, just waiting. Marcus exhaled through his nose and not. Firm, but not loud. The sound echoed slightly against the wood. He waited. Nothing. He shifted his weight. Looked back toward the street out of instinct, like someone might be watching this from a distance. No one was. He knocked again. A little louder this time. Still nothing. Marcus frowned slightly. "You sure?" he asked, half turning toward her. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her eyes stayed on the door. Marcus hesitated, then reached for the handle. It turned, unlocked. He paused again, longer this time. A part of him knew this was the line. Up to now, it had been manageable, helping a kid find her way home, making sure she wasn't alone. Stepping inside, that was different. He stood there, hands still on the handle, feeling the weight of it without fully thinking it through. Behind him, the girl didn't shift, didn't speak, didn't do anything to push him one way or the other. Marcus let out a slow breath, then opened the door. The air inside felt cooler. Not just temperature. Something else. Quieter. The kind of quiet that holds itself together. He stepped in carefully, boots softer now against polished flooring. The smell was faint. Clean, but not sharp. Something like wood and something else he couldn't place. He glanced back. The girl stepped in after him without pause. Marcus closed the door behind them, gently. "Hello?" he called out. His voice felt too loud in the space. It didn't carry far, though. The house seemed to absorb it. No response. He moved a few steps forward into what looked like a living area. Large, but not crowded. Furniture placed with intention. Nothing out of place. No signs of anyone. He turned slightly. "You got someone here?" he asked, quieter now. The girl stood near the entryway, watching. Not him this time. The space. Marcus followed her gaze, scanning again. Something about it felt used but not lived in. Like everything was maintained but not touched often. He noticed a glass on a side table. Half full. Water, maybe. That meant someone had been here. Recently. "All right," he murmured. He walked further in, slower now. Each step measured. "Hello?" he called again, a little firmer. Still nothing. The silence stretched. Not empty. Just unbroken. Marcus felt that same tightening in his chest from earlier, but deeper now. This wasn't just a kid standing alone on a street. Something here didn't add up. He turned back toward the girl. She had moved. Only a little. Closer to the center of the room. Her head tilted slightly, like she was listening to something he couldn't hear. Marcus watched her for a second. Then, a sound. Faint. Somewhere deeper in the house. Not loud enough to be clear, just enough to break the stillness. Marcus straightened. "You hear that?" he asked. The girl didn't respond, but her eyes shifted toward the direction of the sound. Marcus followed, a hallway, dimmer than the rest of the house. He hesitated again, then started toward it, each step slower than the last. The air felt different the further in he went. Thicker, somehow. The sound came again, this time clearer. A movement. A chair, maybe. Or something brushing against wood. Marcus stopped at the edge of the hallway. "Hello?" he called, more controlled now. A pause. Then, "Who's there?" The voice came from the end of the hall. Male. Tired. Controlled in a way that suggested it wasn't always. Marcus exhaled quietly, some of the tension easing out of his shoulders. He started, then adjusted. "I found her. Outside." He glanced back over his shoulder. The girl stood where he had left her, watching. There was a pause from the other end, longer this time. Then footsteps. Slow. Approaching. Marcus stayed where he was, didn't move forward, didn't step back. The man appeared at the end of the hallway. Tall. Thin in a way that didn't look intentional. His shirt slightly wrinkled, sleeves rolled unevenly. Hair not messy. Just. Unattended. His eyes went straight past Marcus. To the girl. Everything else about him changed in that second. Not outwardly. But it was there. A shift. Emma, he said. The name came out quietly. Not a question. The girl didn't move, didn't run to him, didn't react the way Marcus expected. She just looked at him. The man stepped forward, faster now, not rushing, but no longer slow. He passed Marcus without acknowledging him, stopped a few feet from her. You weren't, he started, then stopped himself. His hand lifted slightly, like he might reach for her. Then didn't. He swallowed. Marcus watched the space between them. Something felt careful, like both of them were holding something fragile, even without touching it. After a moment, the man lowered his hand. You shouldn't leave the house, he said, softer now. No anger. Just wait. The girl didn't respond. Marcus shifted slightly, feeling out of place now in a way that hadn't hit him before. The man finally looked at him. A quick glance. Measured. Thank you, he said. Polite. Distant. Marcus nodded once. Yeah, he replied. She was just standing out there. The man's gaze flickered back to the girl, then to Marcus again. I appreciate it, he said. Same tone. Controlled. Marcus felt like that was his cue. He stepped back slightly. All right, he said. I'll. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. He turned toward the door. Each step felt heavier now. Not physically, just something unsettled. He reached the entryway. Hand on the door. He glanced back once. The man stood where he had been. The girl still a few feet in front of him. Neither of them moving. The space between them still held. Marcus opened the door. Stepped outside. The air felt different again, lighter, but not better. He walked down the driveway slowly. Didn't look back this time. The gate creaked as he pushed it open, then closed behind him. He reached the truck. Paused with his hand on the door. Something sat in his chest. Not sharp, not urgent, just there. He looked back once more. The house stood the same, still, closed, like nothing had happened at all. Marcus got into the truck. Closed the door. The engine noise filled the space again. He sat there for a second, then pulled away. He told himself it was done, that he had done what he needed to, that it didn't have anything to do with him anymore. But as he drove, he kept seeing the way the girl had looked at him. Not scared, not grateful, just waiting. And he couldn't quite shake the feeling that he had left something unfinished inside that house. He thought about it longer than he expected to. Not in a clear way. It didn't sit in front of him where he could look at it directly. It stayed somewhere to the side, showing up in pieces when his hands were busy and his mind wasn't. Like when he rinsed out the back of the truck at the end of his shift. Water hitting metal. Same angle. Same motion. Day after day. He'd done it enough times that he didn't need to think anymore. That was usually the point. But that day, the rhythm didn't hold. He kept seeing the hallway, the way the air had felt inside it, and the space between the man and the girl. Marcus shut off the hose and stood there a moment longer than he needed to. Water pooled near his boots, running toward the drain. He wiped his hands on a rag, then stopped halfway through the motion. Didn't finish. It wasn't anything clear. Just something that hadn't settled. He tossed the rag aside and climbed down from the truck. The yard was quieter than usual. A few other drivers finishing up, someone laughing off to the side, a radio playing low from inside one of the garages. Normal. Marcus walked past it all without really hearing any of it. He clocked out. Nodded once at a guy he recognized but didn't speak to. He wasn't in the mood for small talk, and the other guy seemed to read that. Outside, the light had shifted. Late afternoon. The kind that softened edges but didn't hide anything. Marcus stood beside his car for a second before getting in. He looked at his hands. Still faintly dirty, even after washing. The lines in his skin held on to things. He flexed them once, like that would clear something. Then got in the car. The drive home was short. Too short. He didn't like when his mind had time to wander without somewhere to go. He turned the radio on, then off again a minute later. Silence felt worse, but noise didn't help. When he pulled into his spot, he didn't get out right away. Just sat there. The building in front of him looked the same as it always did. Nothing out of place. No reason for anything to feel different. But it did. He rubbed his face with both hands, pressing his palms into his eyes for a second. Then let out a slow breath. "All right," he muttered. No one to hear it. He stepped out and locked the car. The hallway inside his building smelled faintly like cooking oil and something older underneath. It wasn't bad, just familiar. He walked up the stairs, slower than usual. Not tired, just not in a hurry. Inside his apartment, the air felt still. He set his keys down in the same spot he always did. Shoes by the door. Jacket over the chair. Everything where it belonged. He moved to the space without thinking. Kitchen. Sink. A glass of water. He drank it halfway, then set it down. Didn't finish. The quiet pressed in more here. He wasn't used to noticing it. He usually filled it without trying. TV. Music. Anything. Today, he didn't. He sat down on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, stared at the floor. The girl's face came back again. Not her expression. That didn't change. It was the way she had looked at things. At him. At the house. At the hallway. Marcus leaned back slowly, resting his head against the wall behind him. He closed his eyes. That usually helped. It didn't. Instead, the sound came back. That faint noise from inside the house. The one that made him walk down the hallway. He opened his eyes again, sat there a moment, then stood up. He didn't think about it too much. If he had, he might not have moved. Instead, he grabbed his keys again. Left the apartment without turning anything on. The hallway felt narrower on the way out. Outside, the air had cooled slightly. Marcus got in the car and started it. He didn't hesitate this time. The route came back without effort. Turns he hadn't planned before now felt familiar. The streets shifted the same way they had earlier. From worn to cleaner, from crowded to spaced out. The neighborhood changed again, but this time he noticed more. The silence. Not empty. Controlled, like things were meant to stay in place. He slowed as he approached the block. The house came into view. Nothing had changed. Gate slightly open. Windows still. No movement. Marcus parked a little farther down this time. Not directly in front. He sat in the car for a second, hands resting on the wheel. He could leave. Nothing was stopping him. He had no reason to be here. No responsibility. He had already done enough. That thought stayed for a moment. Then passed. Marcus stepped out, closed the door quietly. The street felt even quieter now than before. No passing cars. No distant voices. Just the faint sound of wind moving somewhere above. He walked toward the house. Slower this time. More aware. The gate creaked the same way when he pushed it open. He paused again at the start of the driveway. Looked at the house. Waited. Nothing. He walked up. Each step felt heavier now. Not uncertain. Just deliberate. At the door, he didn't knock right away. He stood there, listening. The silence held. He raised his hand. Knocked. Once. Waited. No response. He knocked again. A little firmer. Still nothing. Marcus frowned slightly. He glanced at the handle, then back at the door. Something in his chest shifted. Not warning. Not exactly. Just awareness. He reached for the handle. Turned it. Unlocked. The same as before. He opened the door slowly. The cool air met him again. That same quiet. Unchanged. Marcus stepped inside, closed the door behind him. Hello? He called out. His voice felt too loud again. He didn't wait long this time. He moved forward, past the same furniture, the same glass on the table. Still there. Still half full. He noticed that it hadn't moved. The hallway ahead looked the same. Dim. Still. Marcus walked toward it, slower now, each step measured. He stopped at the edge again. Listened. Nothing. Then. A soft sound. Not from the end this time. Closer. Behind him. Marcus turned. The girl stood near the center of the room. He hadn't heard her come in. He hadn't seen the door open. She was just there. Same stillness, same eyes. On him. Marcus stared for a second, then let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. You, he started, then stopped. He didn't know what to ask. How she got there didn't make sense, but she didn't look like anything was wrong. She just stood there, like she'd been waiting again. Marcus rubbed his jaw. You always do that? He said quietly. No answer. Of course. He looked back toward the hallway, then at her again. Your dad home? He asked. The word felt strange coming out. Dad. It fit. But something about it didn't sit right. The girl didn't respond. But her gaze shifted. Toward the hallway. Marcus followed it. The air felt heavier now. More than before. He stood there a second longer, then took a step forward. The floor didn't make a sound. He moved down the hallway slowly. The light dimmed slightly as he went. The lights closer now, the quiet thicker. He reached the midpoint, stopped, listened. Then a voice, not calling out, not speaking to him, just speaking, low, controlled, from a room ahead. Marcus glanced back. The girl stood at the start of the hallway, watching. He nodded once, not to her, to himself, then moved forward again. The door at the end of the hallway was slightly open. Not enough to see inside clearly, just enough for the voice to slip through. Marcus slowed as he approached it. The voice wasn't sharp. It didn't carry urgency. If anything, it sounded measured, like each word had been placed carefully before being spoken. He couldn't make out what was being said, just the rhythm of it. He stopped a few feet from the door, listened. The floor beneath him felt solid, grounded. But something in the air didn't match that. It felt thinner here, like the quiet had been stretched too far. Marcus raised his hand, paused, then pushed the door open a little more. The room inside was larger than he expected. Not empty, but not crowded either. A desk near the window, shelves along one wall, papers stacked, not messy, but not fully ordered. The man stood near the far side of the room, back partially turned, one hand resting on the edge of the desk, the other holding something small. Marcus couldn't see it clearly. The man didn't stop speaking right away. It took a second, then another. Before his voice cut off mid-sentence, he didn't turn immediately. He just stood there, still, like he had heard something he hadn't expected but wasn't ready to face yet. Marcus stayed where he was, didn't step further into the room. Sorry, he said, quieter this time. I knocked. The man's shoulders shifted slightly. Then he turned. His expression didn't change quickly. It moved in pieces. First recognition. Then something else. Something tighter. You again, he said. Not surprised. Not welcoming either. Marcus nodded once. Yeah, he replied. He stopped. Didn't finish the sentence. Because he didn't know what it was yet, why he had come back. The man studied him for a second, long enough to make the silence feel heavier than before. Then his eyes moved past Marcus, toward the hallway. Marcus didn't turn. He didn't need to. He knew the girl was still there. The man exhaled slowly. Emma, he said, not raising his voice. Marcus heard movement behind him, light, measured. He stepped slightly to the side without thinking, gave space. The girl walked into the room. Same quiet steps, same stillness in her posture. She stopped a few feet from the man, closer than before, but still not close enough to touch. Marcus watched the distance between them again. It hadn't changed much. The man lowered whatever he had been holding onto the desk. His hands were empty now. He looked at her for a long moment, then crouched slightly. Not all the way down, just enough to bring himself closer to her level. "You left," he said. No anger, no sharpness, just something that carried weight. The girl didn't respond. Marcus shifted his weight near the door. Felt like he was standing in a place he wasn't meant to stay. But he didn't move. The man's gaze stayed on her, steady, waiting. Then, nothing. No reaction, no answer. Just that same quiet. Marcus felt something tighten again in his chest. Not discomfort. Something else. Something closer to pressure. Like the room was holding more than it should. The man straightened slowly. His face didn't change much, but something in it settled deeper. He glanced at Marcus. Brief, then back to the girl. "She doesn't speak," he said. It wasn't directed at Marcus fully. More like a statement that had been repeated enough times it didn't need a response. Marcus nodded once. "Yeah," he said. He had figured that. Still felt different hearing it. The man ran a hand over his face. "Slow. Tired. Doctors," he added after a moment. "Specialists. Years." Each word spaced out. Careful. Marcus didn't respond right away. There didn't seem to be a place for it. The room felt full enough already. The man let his hand fall back to his side. "She understands," he said. "Everything." His voice tightened slightly on the last word. Not enough to break. Just enough to notice. Marcus looked at the girl. She was watching her father. Same steady gaze. No confusion, no resistance. Just there. Marcus swallowed once. "You mind if I—" He started, then stopped. The question didn't finish. Didn't need to. The man looked at him. Longer this time. Weighing something. Then gave a small nod. Not permission. More like acceptance. Marcus stepped a little further into the room. Slow, careful. Like sudden movement might break something. He crouched down. Not too close, just enough to not tower over her. "Hey," he said quietly. The word felt smaller here. The girl shifted her eyes toward him. Not her head, just her eyes. Marcus held that for a second. Didn't rush. Didn't try to fill the space. "You scared him," he said after a moment, nodding slightly toward the man. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't wrong either. The girl didn't react. Marcus let out a small breath through his nose. "Me too," he added. That one was closer. The man watched from where he stood. Didn't interrupt. Didn't step in. Marcus glanced around the room briefly, not looking for anything specific. Just grounding himself. Then his gaze returned to her. He studied her face for a second, noticing small things. The way her eyes moved, the way she held her shoulders. Nothing tense, nothing loose either. Just controlled. Marcus leaned back slightly on his heels. Then, almost without thinking, he hummed. Soft, low, barely there. It wasn't a tune he chose. It just came. Something old. Something he hadn't thought about in years. The sound sat in the room differently than his voice had. It didn't break the silence. It moved through it. Marcus didn't look at anyone. Just kept it steady. Simple. The kind of sound that didn't ask for attention. After a few seconds, he almost stopped. Felt strange. Out of place. But something made him continue. Just a little longer. Then, a shift. Small, but clear. Marcus didn't see it first. He felt it. In the way the air changed. In the way the silence moved. He looked up. The girl's eyes were on him. Different now. Not wide. Not startled. just focused in a way they hadn't been before. Marcus slowed the humming, didn't stop. Not yet. The man hadn't moved, but Marcus could feel his attention sharpen behind him. The room held still. Then, a sound. Not from Marcus. From her. Barely there. A breath shaped differently. Marcus froze. The hum faded on its own. The girl's lips parted slightly, like she was testing something. The man took a step forward. Not fast. Careful, like any sudden movement might undo whatever was happening. Marcus didn't move at all, didn't speak. The girl's mouth moved again. A small sound. Unsteady. Not clear. But real. The man stopped where he was. His hand lifted slightly, then stilled. Marcus felt something shift in his chest again, stronger this time. He didn't understand it. Didn't try to. He just stayed where he was. The girl looked between them, then back at Marcus. Her lips moved once more. This time, clearer, soft, almost breaking as it came out. Paw. The sound hung in the air, fragile, incomplete, but unmistakable. The man's breath caught. Marcus heard it, felt it. The girl tried again. A little more steady, her voice thin like it hadn't been used before. Papa. The word landed, not loud, not dramatic, but it filled the room in a way nothing else had. The man didn't move right away. He stood there, like he didn't trust what he had just heard. Then something in him broke loose. Not outwardly, not in a way that showed, but it was there. He stepped forward. Slow, then faster, closing the distance that had stayed untouched until now. Marcus stayed crouched, didn't get in the way, didn't speak. The girl didn't step back, didn't hesitate. She just looked at him as he reached her. The room held that moment. Quiet, but no longer empty, and Marcus understood without knowing how that, whatever had just happened, didn't belong to him. But he would carry it anyway. Marcus didn't leave right away. He told himself he would, that it wasn't his place to stay inside that moment. But his body didn't follow through. He stood slowly, stepping back just enough to give them space but not enough to disappear from it completely. The man Richard, he assumed now, had dropped whatever distance he'd been holding before. He was close to her. Closer than Marcus had seen. Not touching, at first. Just there. Like he needed to be sure she wouldn't disappear if he blinked. Say it again, Richard said. His voice was lower than before. Not controlled the same way. There was something underneath it now. Not loud, just unsteady. The girl Emma looked up at him. Her face hadn't changed much, but something had. It wasn't in her expression. It was in the way she stayed. Like the space between them didn't need to be measured anymore. Her lips moved again. Papa. Softer this time. Less effort. The word didn't break as much. Richard closed his eyes. Just for a second, Marcus saw his hand lift again. This time, it didn't stop. It rested lightly on her shoulder. Careful, like he wasn't sure if contact would undo what had just happened. Emma didn't pull away. Didn't react at all, really. But she didn't freeze either. She just allowed it. Marcus turned his head slightly, giving them the kind of privacy that didn't require him to leave the room. He didn't know why. Maybe because walking out now would feel like stepping out of something unfinished. Maybe because part of him didn't trust that it would hold without someone else seeing it. He stayed, quiet. Richard let out a breath that sounded like it had been waiting a long time. You've been able to... He started, then stopped. He didn't finish the thought. Emma looked at him. Then, slowly, her eyes shifted. Back to Marcus. It wasn't a glance. It stayed. Marcus felt it. He didn't move right away. Didn't want to interrupt whatever was still unfolding. But the look held, so he met it. There was something different now. Not waiting. Not exactly. Something closer to recognition. Or maybe response. Marcus shifted his weight slightly. Hey, he said again. Same word. But it didn't land the same way now. Emma blinked. Slow. Then her gaze moved back to her father, like that moment had already passed for her. Richard followed her eyes, looked at Marcus again. This time, his expression didn't stay distant. It wasn't open either, just changed. "What did you do?" he asked. The question wasn't sharp, but it wasn't casual. Marcus shook his head slightly. "Nothing," he said. "It came out simple." Because it was. Richard studied him. Didn't seem convinced. Marcus understood that. He wouldn't have been either. Marcus started, then paused. He thought about explaining, about the humming, about how it hadn't meant anything. But the words didn't fit. So he let them go. "I didn't do anything," he said again, quieter. The room settled around that. Richard didn't press, not right away. He looked back at Emma, then down at his hand on her shoulder, like he was still getting used to the idea that he could leave it there. Marcus stepped back another half step, not leaving, just easing out of the center. "You should probably sit," Marcus said after a moment. He didn't know why he said it. It just came. Richard glanced at him, then nodded once. Like the suggestion gave him something to hold on to. He guided Emma gently toward a chair near the desk. She went without resistance, sat the same way she stood. Still, controlled. Richard pulled a chair closer, sat across from her, close enough to reach. Not touching this time, just watching. Marcus stayed near the door. The distance felt right. Not too close, not too far. The silence returned, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one had something in it. Something that didn't need to be filled. Richard leaned forward slightly. "Elma," he said, correcting himself mid-word. Like even her name felt different now. She looked at him. He swallowed. "Can you say anything else?" The question hung there. Not heavy, but fragile. Emma didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on him, then shifted slightly, like she was searching for something inside the space between them. Marcus watched without meaning to. The room felt smaller now, focused. Emma's lips moved. A small sound came out. Not clear, not formed. Just there. Richard didn't react immediately. He stayed still, like reacting too quickly might break it. Emma tried again. Another sound. A little more shape to it this time. Still not a word, but closer. Marcus felt that same shift in his chest again. He looked down briefly, then back up. Richard leaned forward more. "Take your time," he said quietly. Emma's gaze flickered, then steadied again. Her mouth opened slightly. Closed. Opened again. Then, nothing. The moment passed. Not lost. Just paused. Emma leaned back in the chair, her body relaxing in a way Marcus hadn't seen before. Subtle, but there. Richard didn't move, didn't push. He just sat there, watching her, taking it in. Marcus exhaled slowly. Didn't realize he had been holding his breath. He stepped back again. This time, closer to the hallway. The room felt like it didn't need him anymore. But he didn't leave. Not yet. Richard looked up at him again. Longer this time. There was something different in his eyes now. Not suspicion. Not exactly gratitude either. Something harder to name. "You should stay," Richard said. Marcus paused. The words landed heavier than expected. "I don't," Marcus started, then stopped. He looked at Emma. She wasn't looking at him. She was tracing something lightly on the edge of the chair with her fingers. Small movement. Quiet, but present. Marcus shifted his weight. "I got work early," he said. It sounded thin. Even to him. Richard nodded once, like he understood, but didn't accept it fully. "Just for a bit," he said. Marcus hesitated. He didn't have a reason to stay, but he didn't have a clear reason to leave either, and the space felt different now. Less closed, less controlled. He glanced toward the hallway, then back at the room, then at Emma again. She looked up briefly, not at him, at the space around him, then back down. Marcus let out a slow breath, then nodded. All right, he said. Not committing to anything more than that, he stepped back into the room slightly. Took a seat near the wall. Not close. Just present. The silence settled again. But this time, it didn't feel like something missing. It felt like something holding. And Marcus stayed inside it. Time moved differently in the room. Marcus noticed it without checking a clock. Wasn't slower exactly, just uneven. Some moments stretched longer than they should have. Others passed before he could place them. No one spoke for a while. Richard stayed leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on his knees. His attention didn't drift. Not once. It stayed on Emma like it had nowhere else to go. Emma didn't seem aware of it. Or maybe she was, and it just didn't change how she sat. Her fingers kept moving along the edge of the chair, small, quiet motions, repeating, not nervous, not distracted. Just something to hold on to. Marcus sat near the wall, hands resting loosely together. He wasn't used to sitting still this long without purpose. At work, stillness meant delay. A problem. Something unfinished. Here, it didn't feel like that. Here, stillness felt necessary. Richard shifted slightly after a while. Not enough to break the space, just enough to adjust. Emma, he said. Her fingers paused. She looked up. Can you say it again? The question was softer now, less like a request, more like hope being handled carefully. Emma's eyes stayed on him. Marcus watched her face, waiting without realizing he was. Her lips parted slightly. A breath. Then, nothing. She closed her mouth again, looked down. The moment didn't break. It just settled. Richard nodded once, like he had expected that, or prepared himself for it. That's all right, he said. The words came out steady. But Marcus heard something under them, something that didn't fully hold. Emma's fingers started moving again. Same pattern, same quiet rhythm. Marcus shifted slightly in his seat. The air in the room felt warmer now. Or maybe he had just adjusted to it. He glanced around, noticed more this time. The shelves weren't just books. There were files, papers, notes placed between pages, small markers sticking out at different angles, a photograph near the corner of the desk. He couldn't see it clearly from where he sat, but he saw enough to recognize two figures, one taller, one smaller, both facing the camera. He looked away before focusing too much on it. Something about looking felt like crossing a line. Richard leaned back slightly in his chair. His eyes stayed on Emma, but his posture changed. Less forward, more tired. You tried this before, Marcus said. The words came out before he fully decided to speak. Richard didn't look at him right away. Everything, he replied. Simple. Final. Marcus nodded once. That made sense. The room felt like it held years of trying. Not chaos. Just effort. Repeated. Careful. Exhausting. Marcus rubbed his hands together lightly. More out of habit than need. He didn't usually talk in spaces like this. Didn't usually stay this long either. But leaving still felt unfinished. Music? Marcus asked after a moment. The word sat there. Richard's gaze shifted to him. Sharp for a second. Then softened. Yes, he said. Of course. Marcus nodded again. Figured as much. Did it help? He asked. Richard's expression didn't change much, but his eyes did. Nothing helped, he said. Not bitter. Just stated. Marcus looked down briefly, then back at Emma. She was still tracing that same edge, but slower now, like her focus had shifted somewhere else. Marcus leaned forward slightly, rested his forearms on his knees. Can I try something? He asked. He wasn't sure why he asked this time. Before, it had just happened. Now it felt different, more deliberate. Richard watched him, long enough that Marcus thought he might say no. Then, a small nod. Marcus shifted his weight, looked at Emma. She didn't look up. Didn't need to. He didn't start right away. He waited a second. Let the room settle again. Then he hummed, softer than before. Less certain. The same tune tried to come back, but it didn't land the same way. It felt distant. Marcus adjusted slightly, let it change. Didn't force it, just followed what came. The sound moved through the room again. Low. Even. But this time, it didn't carry the same weight. Not empty. Just not the same. Emma's fingers slowed, then stopped, her head tilted slightly, the smallest movement. Marcus kept the hum steady. Didn't look at Richard, didn't look at anything, just let it sit. A few seconds passed, then more. Emma looked up, her eyes moved toward him, focused again. Marcus felt that shift, but he didn't stop. Didn't change the rhythm. Emma's lips parted, a breath. Then, a sound. Faint, shaped, but not clear. Marcus felt it land, but he didn't react, didn't break the flow. Emma tried again. The sound came out thinner this time, less certain. Then it faded. She closed her mouth, looked down. Her fingers didn't move again. The moment slipped. Not broken. Just gone. Marcus let the hum fade naturally, didn't cut it off, didn't push it further. Silence returned. Richard didn't move, but Marcus could feel the tension in the room shift. Not disappointment. Something quieter, something heavier. Marcus leaned back slowly, rested against the chair. "Doesn't work like that," he said, more to himself than to Richard. Richard exhaled through his nose. "Nothing does," he replied. Marcus nodded slightly. That felt true. The room sat with that for a while. Emma stayed still, her gaze somewhere lower now. Not distant. Just inward. Marcus watched her, not trying to understand, just noticing. After a moment she lifted her eyes again. Not to her father. To Marcus. The look was different again. Not focused the same way as before. Softer. But still direct. Marcus held it for a second, then gave a small nod. Didn't say anything. Emma's lips moved slightly. No sound came out. But the effort was there. Marcus saw it. So did Richard. No one spoke. No one pushed. The room held it, then let it pass. Marcus stood slowly. The chair made a faint sound against the floor. Both of them looked at him. "I should go," he said. This time it didn't feel thin. It felt right. Richard nodded once. Didn't try to stop him. Emma watched him. Same quiet. But not the same as before. Marcus moved toward the door. Step by step, the hallway felt less heavy now. Not light, just different. At the doorway he paused, looked back once. Richard sat forward again, closer to Emma. Not touching, but near. Emma sat still, watching him. Marcus gave a small nod, not sure what it meant, then turned. Walked out. The front door closed behind him with a soft sound. Outside, the air felt cooler. He stood on the driveway for a second, breathing, not heavy, just aware. The gate creaked again as he pushed it open. The street was still quiet, but not the same quiet as before. Marcus walked back to his car. Each step steady. He got in, closed the door. The silence inside the car felt different now, too. Not something to fill, just something to sit with. He rested his hands on the wheel, didn't start the engine right away. For a moment he just sat there, seeing the room again, hearing the word, Papa. Soft, fragile, real. He exhaled slowly, then started the car, pulled away. This time, he didn't tell himself it was done. He didn't try to close it, because something in him already knew. It wasn't. He tried not to come back the next day. That part mattered. Marcus woke up earlier than he needed to. Lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling. The room felt the same. Nothing out of place. Same cracks near the corner. Same faint hum from somewhere in the building. He stayed there longer than usual. then got up anyway. Work didn't change. The truck started the same way. The route stayed the same. Same stops. Same bins. Same weight in his arms by the middle of the shift. But the rhythm didn't hold. It slipped in places. He missed one pickup. Had to double back. A driver behind him honked once. Not aggressive, just enough to say, "Pay attention." Marcus lifted a hand without looking back. Kept moving. He didn't think about the house directly. It stayed somewhere behind everything else. But it showed up in pieces. The way the girl had looked at him. The way the man had said years. The sound of that word in the room. He finished his shift without rushing. Didn't linger either. Just finished. At the yard, he cleaned out the truck slower than usual. Not because it needed it, just because his hands didn't move as automatically as they usually did. Water hit metal. He watched it run. Didn't think. Or tried not to. When he was done, he didn't go straight to his car. He stood there a moment, looking at nothing in particular, then walked anyway. Not toward his car. Toward the street. He didn't question it this time. The drive felt shorter, or maybe he just didn't notice it. The streets changed again, same as before. Worn to clean, noise to quiet. He parked in the same spot as yesterday, a little down from the house. Turned the engine off this time. Sat there, hands resting on his legs. He could leave. Still, nothing had changed about that. But the thought didn't stay long. He stepped out. Closed the door quietly. The street felt aware. Not in a real way. Just in the way silence sometimes does when you walk into it already carrying something. Marcus walked to the gate. Pushed it open. Same sound. Same slight resistance. He didn't pause at the driveway this time. Just walked up. Knocked once. Waited. No answer. He reached for the handle. Stopped. Listened. Nothing. Then opened it. The air inside hadn't changed. Cool. Still. He stepped in. Closed the door behind him. Didn't call out right away. He stood there a second, letting his eyes adjust. The glass on the table was gone. He noticed that. Small thing. But different. He moved forward. Slow. The house didn't feel as closed as it had before. Not open. Just less sealed. He walked toward the hallway. Didn't hesitate this time. The dim light met him halfway. He heard something before he reached the end. Not a voice. Movement. Soft. Measured. He stopped outside the same room. The door was open now, wider than before. He didn't knock, just stepped into the doorway. Richard sat in the chair, same one as yesterday, leaning forward again. But his posture wasn't the same. It looked worn, not from sleep, from holding something too long. Emma sat across from him. Same stillness, but not the same. Her feet didn't rest flat on the floor anymore. One of them moved slightly, back and forth, small, but there. Richard looked up when Marcus stepped in. He didn't seem surprised. Not really, just aware. "You came back," he said. Not a question. Marcus nodded once. "Yeah." He didn't explain. Richard didn't ask. The space between them felt different now. Not closed, not open. Just acknowledged. Marcus stepped inside. Stayed near the door. "Anything?" he asked. The word felt too small, but it was enough. Richard looked at Emma, then back at Marcus. "She said it again," he said. His voice didn't rise, didn't break. But something in it had changed. Marcus nodded. "That's good," he said. It sounded simple, but it wasn't empty. Richard leaned back slightly, Ryan a hand over his face. "She hasn't since." The words came out quieter. Marcus didn't respond right away. He looked at Emma. She wasn't looking at either of them. Her gaze was somewhere lower, focused on the space just in front of her. Her fingers rested in her lap, still, not tracing anything this time. Marcus took a step forward. Slow, not too close. "You tired?" he asked. The question came without thinking. Emma didn't look up, didn't respond, but her foot kept moving, back and forth. Marcus watched it. then crouched down slightly. Same distance as before, not closer. "Hey," he said. The word landed softer this time. Emma's eyes lifted, met his, not searching, not waiting, just meeting. Marcus held that. Didn't rush, didn't fill the space. He almost hummed again. The thought came, then passed. Something told them not to. Not yet. Richard watched from behind. Silent, not interfering. Marcus shifted slightly, rested one arm on his knee. "You don't have to," he said. He wasn't sure if he meant speaking or something else. Emma blinked. Slow. Her foot stopped moving. The room held that. Marcus didn't look at Richard. Didn't check for a reaction. He stayed with her. Emma's lips moved slightly. No sound. Then again, a breath shaped. Then nothing. She looked down. The moment didn't hold. Marcus didn't push. Didn't repeat anything. He just nodded once. Like that was enough. Richard exhaled behind him, a quieter sound than before. Marcus stood slowly, stepped back, gave space again. The room settled. Not tense, just waiting. Marcus glanced around. The papers on the desk had shifted, some stacked differently. A notebook open now. Pen resting across it. Signs of effort. Ongoing. He looked back at Richard. "You been at it all day?" he asked. Richard gave a small nod. "Most of it." Marcus nodded. Didn't say anything else. He understood that kind of time. The kind that doesn't move the way it should. He leaned against the wall slightly. Not fully resting. Just there. Minutes passed. Or something like minutes. Emma stayed still. Richard didn't speak. Marcus didn't move. Then, Emma lifted her head again. Slow. Her eyes moved toward Marcus. Held there. Different this time. Not focused the same way as before. Not soft either. Something in between. Marcus felt it. Didn't react. Just stayed. Her lips parted. A breath. Then nothing. She closed her mouth again. Looked down. Marcus let out a small breath. Not disappointment. Just acknowledgement. He pushed off the wall slightly. "I'm not helping," he said. The words came out flat. Richard looked at him. "You are," he replied. Marcus shook his head once. "It's not something you can repeat." He didn't know how else to say it. Richard studied him. Didn't argue. Didn't agree. Just listened. Marcus glanced at Emma again, then back at Richard. "Maybe it's not the sound," he added. The thought came slowly, not fully formed. Richard's expression shifted slightly. "Then what is it?" he asked. Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked at Emma, at the way she sat, at the way the room held her, then back at Richard. "I don't know," he said. It felt honest. The room settled again. But something had changed. Not in a clear way. Just shifted. Marcus felt it. Didn't try to name it. He just stayed inside it. They didn't try again right away. That part felt different from before. Yesterday, everything had moved without anyone deciding it would. The moment had just formed, and they had stepped into it without thinking. Now, they all knew it existed, and that changed how they sat with it. Marcus stayed near the wall for a while longer, arms resting loosely at his sides. Richard hadn't moved much, still in the chair, still leaning forward. But there was less urgency in the way he held himself now. Not because it didn't matter. Because it did. Too much to keep pushing at it the same way. Emma shifted in her chair. Not a big movement, just enough to pull one leg up slightly, tucking it closer under her. It made her look smaller. Not fragile. Just contained. Marcus watched that for a second, then looked away. Richard stood after a while. Slow, like his body had to catch up to the decision. "I'll get some water," he said. The words were simple, but they broke the stillness in a way nothing else had. Marcus nodded once. Didn't offer anything else. Richard walked past him, out into the hallway. His steps were quieter than they should have been for a man his size. Emma stayed where she was. Her eyes moved, following him for a second. Then back to the space in front of her. Marcus shifted slightly. The room felt larger with just the two of them in it. Or maybe just less focused. He pushed off the wall and took a few steps forward. Not too close. Same distance he had kept before. "You all right?" he asked. The question came out low. Emma looked up at him. There was no sign she understood the words differently than before, but something in the way she held his gaze had changed. Marcus crouched down again. Slower this time, like he didn't want to interrupt anything that might still be forming under the surface. He rested his forearms on his knees. Didn't speak again right away. He let the space sit. Emma didn't look away. Her eyes stayed on him. Not searching. Not empty. Just there. Marcus felt the urge to fill the silence. To try something again. The hum came back to him. Sat in his throat. He almost let it out. Then stopped. Something about it felt wrong now. Not the sound itself. The intention. Before, it hadn't meant anything. Now, it would. And that changed it. Marcus exhaled slowly. "You don't owe him anything," he said quietly. The words surprised him as they came out. He hadn't planned them. Emma blinked. Once. Slow. Her head tilted slightly. Marcus wasn't sure she understood, but he didn't take it back. "He wants it," Marcus added. "That's different." Emma's fingers moved slightly in her lap. Not tracing, just pressing together. Marcus watched that. Then looked back at her face. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," he said. His voice stayed even, not pushing, not soft in a way that asked for anything, just steady. Emma's lips parted. A breath, then closed again. Her eyes didn't leave his. Marcus felt something shift again. Not in the room, in himself. Something about the way she held that space without trying to fill it, without reacting the way people expected. He leaned back slightly. Let his weight shift off his heels. "You ever been outside that street before?" he asked. A different question. Emma blinked again. Her gaze didn't move, but something in her posture changed. Slight, almost nothing. Marcus noticed anyway. He nodded once, like that was enough of an answer. "Didn't think so," he said quietly. The room held that. Then, a small sound, not from her mouth, from the hallway. Marcus turned his head slightly. Richard stepped back into the room, a glass in his hand. Water inside it caught the light. He paused when he saw them. Not in a suspicious way, just observing. Emma looked at him, then back at Marcus. Marcus stood up slowly. Gave them space again. Richard walked over and set the glass on the desk. "Thank you," Marcus said. "Not for the water, for something else." Richard nodded once. Didn't ask. Didn't question it. He looked at Emma, then at Marcus. "You said it wasn't the sound," Richard said. Marcus leaned lightly against the wall again. "Yeah." Richard waited. Marcus took a second. Didn't rush to explain something he didn't fully understand. "She responded before she spoke," Marcus said. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in confusion. In focus. Marcus continued. "She looked at things different." He gestured lightly with one hand, not pointing at anything specific. "Like she was already there," he added. The words felt incomplete, but closer than anything else he had. Richard glanced at Emma, then back at Marcus. "And the humming?" he asked. Marcus shook his head once. "That just happened." Richard studied him. Marcus held it. Didn't add anything. Didn't try to make it make more sense than it did. The room settled again. Not quiet in the same way as before. More open. Emma shifted slightly in her chair. Her foot moved again. Back and forth. Slower now. Marcus watched her. Then looked at Richard. "You ever just sit with her?" he asked. Richard frowned slightly. "I do," he said. Marcus nodded. "I mean, without trying." The distinction hung there. Richard didn't respond right away. His gaze moved to Emma. Stayed there, longer than before. Marcus didn't push, didn't explain further. He let the idea sit where it landed. Emma looked between them. Not confused, just aware. Marcus pushed off the wall again, straightened. I should go, he said. The words came easier this time, less weight behind them. Richard nodded. Didn't ask him to stay. Didn't stop him. Emma looked at Marcus. Her gaze followed him as he moved toward the door. Marcus paused at the edge of the room, turned slightly, met her eyes. There was something there. Not the same as before. Not the same as yesterday either. It wasn't waiting. It wasn't response. It was recognition. Quiet, but clear. Marcus gave a small nod, then turned, walked down the hallway. The house felt different behind him now. Less closed, less heavy. He stepped out the front door. The air outside met him again, cooler than before. He walked down the driveway. The gate creaked as it opened, then closed behind him. He reached his car, got in, sat there for a second, hands resting on the wheel. He didn't replay the moment this time, didn't try to hold on to it, he just sat. Then started the engine, pulled away. The house disappeared behind him. But something from it stayed. Not the word, not the sound, something quieter, something that didn't need to be repeated to exist. Marcus drove home without turning the radio on. The silence didn't press in the same way now. It just stayed with him, and for the first time since he had seen her standing in the street. He didn't feel like he had left something unfinished. He felt like something had followed him instead. He didn't go back the next day. That was the first thing that changed. Not because he didn't think about it. He did, more than he wanted to admit. But something in him held. Not resistance, just space, like whatever had been happening didn't need him there every time it moved. Work felt steadier that morning. Not easier. Just clearer. His hands moved the way they were supposed to again. The rhythm came back. Lift. Dump. Move. Repeat. The noise didn't bother him. The weight didn't register the same way it had before. Even the small interruptions, the missed bin, the car parked too close, someone stepping out too late, none of it stuck. He handled it. Let it pass. There was still something under it all, but it didn't pull at him the same way. By the time he finished his shift, he didn't stand around, didn't hesitate. He washed down the truck, put things back where they belonged, clocked out, went to his car. The decision not to go back felt quiet, not forced, just there. He drove home. The streets didn't change the way they had the past few days. Or maybe he just didn't look for it. Inside his apartment, the air felt the same. Still. Familiar. He set his keys down, sat for a moment, then stood again. He didn't turn anything on, didn't fill the space. He just moved through it, slower than usual, more aware of where things were, of how they stayed. That night passed without much thought. Sleep came easier, not deep, but steady. The next day, he went back. He didn't decide to. He just found himself driving there after work again. Same route, same turns. The neighborhood shifted. Quieter, cleaner, controlled. He parked in the same spot, turned the engine off, sat there. This time, it wasn't hesitation. It was recognition. Like arriving somewhere he already understood a little. He stepped out, closed the door, walked to the gate, pushed it open. Same sound. He didn't pause at the driveway. Didn't knock at the door. He just opened it. Stepped inside. The air felt different. Not cooler. Not quieter. Just lived in. There were small changes. A book left open on the table. A chair moved slightly out of place. The kind of things that didn't matter unless you had seen it before. Marcus walked toward the hallway. No hesitation now. The door at the end was open. He stepped into the room. Richard was standing this time, near the window, not leaning, not sitting, just standing. Emma sat on the floor, not in the chair, her legs crossed loosely, a piece of paper in front of her, a pencil in her hand. She wasn't drawing anything clear, just lines, back and forth, not random, not structured either. Marcus stood in the doorway. Neither of them looked up right away. Then Emma's eyes lifted, found him, held. Marcus nodded once, didn't speak. Richard turned after a second, saw him. His expression didn't shift much, but something in it settled. "You came back," he said. Same words, different tone. Marcus nodded. "Yeah." He stepped inside, stayed near the door, didn't interrupt. Emma looked at him for another moment, then back at the paper. Her hand moved again, the pencil making soft, uneven sounds. Richard watched her, then looked at Marcus. "She's been trying," he said. The pause sat in the middle of the sentence. Marcus nodded. He could see that. It wasn't in the sounds, it was in the way she held herself. Different, less contained, still quiet, but not closed. Marcus moved a little closer, not crouching this time, just standing. "Hey," he said. The word landed in the room. Emma's hand stopped. She looked up. The pencil stayed in her fingers. Marcus watched her. Didn't add anything, didn't push. Emma's lips moved slightly, a breath. Then, "Pa?" It came out softer than before. Less effort, more familiar. Marcus didn't react, didn't move. Richard didn't either. They both held still. Emma looked at Marcus, then at her father. Her mouth opened again. "Papa." The word didn't break this time, it didn't strain, it just came. It just came. Richard closed his eyes again, longer this time. His shoulders dropped slightly. Marcus saw it, didn't look away. Emma looked between them, not searching, not waiting, just aware. Marcus let out a slow breath, barely there, then nodded. "That's good," he said. Same words as before. But they didn't feel small this time. They felt enough. Emma's hand moved again. The pencil touched the paper. Lines continued. Marcus watched for a second, then looked at Richard. Richard looked back. Something passed between them. Not agreement, not understanding, just acknowledgement. Marcus stepped back slightly, gave them space. He didn't stay long after that. Didn't need to. He stood there for a few minutes, watching the room, the way it held now. Less pressure, less weight. Emma didn't try to speak again. Richard didn't ask her to. They just stayed. Marcus turned toward the door. "I'll see you," he said. Not a question. Richard nodded once. Emma looked up again. Their eyes met for a second. Then Marcus turned, walked out. He didn't keep count of how many times he went back after that. It stopped feeling like visits. More like passing through something that stayed open. Some days he would step inside and nothing happened. Emma would sit the same way, quiet, her pencil moving or her hands resting still in her lap. Richard would be there, standing, sitting, sometimes pacing slowly without realizing it. They didn't always speak. Most of the time, they didn't. Marcus would stay for a while, lean against the wall, sit near the door, watch without staring, then leave. No change. No moment. And somehow those days mattered just as much. Other times, it would come in small ways, not words, not fully, just sounds, a shape of something forming and then falling apart before it reached the surface. Richard stopped asking. That was the second thing that changed. Marcus noticed it one afternoon when he walked in and found them both sitting on the floor. No chairs, no desk between them, just space. Emma was closer to him now, not touching, but within reach. Richard's hands rested on his knees, still, not waiting, just there. Marcus stayed near the door that day. Didn't step in fully, didn't want to interrupt something that didn't need him. Emma looked up at him, held his gaze, then looked back at her father. Her lips moved slightly. A breath. Then, "Pa." Richard didn't react. Not the way he used to. He didn't lean forward, didn't speak. He just stayed. Emma tried again. "Papa." The word came out clearer. Not fragile anymore. Not something that might break if held too tightly. It just existed. Richard's eyes closed, but his posture didn't change. He didn't reach for her. Didn't rush the moment. He let it sit. Marcus watched from the doorway. Felt something shift again. Not in the room. In himself. A kind of understanding that didn't need words. Emma looked at Marcus again. Then back at her father. Then down at her hands. The moment passed, but it didn't disappear. It stayed in the room, like something placed carefully where it could remain. Marcus left shortly after. He didn't need to stay longer. The walk back to his car felt different now. Not lighter. Just settled. Days kept moving. Work stayed the same. Routes didn't change. The truck still made the same noise. The same weight in his arms. The same smells that clung to his clothes no matter how long he washed them. But something in him had shifted. He noticed it in small things. The way he didn't rush as much. The way silence didn't press in the same way when he got home. The way he sometimes sat without turning anything on. Just sitting. Not waiting for anything. Just being there. He stopped going every day. Not intentionally. It just happened. 2 days would pass. Then 3. Then he'd find himself back on that street again. The gate would still be slightly open, the door unlocked. Like the house had adjusted too. One evening he arrived later than usual. The light outside had already started to fade, the street quieter than before. He stepped inside, didn't call out. The house felt different at that hour. Not darker, just deeper. He walked down the hallway. The room at the end was lit by a single lamp. Richard sat near the window. Emma stood beside him, not across from him. Beside, close. Her hand rested lightly against his arm. Marcus stopped in the doorway. Didn't step in. Didn't want to disturb it. Emma looked at him, saw him, then without hesitation. "Papa." The word came out clear. Steady. Not practiced. Not fragile. Just hers. Richard didn't move. Not right away. He turned his head slightly toward her. Not fully, just enough. Then his hand lifted. Covered hers. No hesitation. No pause. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Not sharp. Just full. He stepped back. Quietly. Didn't need to be there. Didn't need to see more. He turned. Walked down the hallway. Out the front door. The air outside had cooled. The sky darker now. Streetlights beginning to come on. Marcus walked to his car. Each step steady. He got in. Closed the door. Sat there for a moment. Hands resting on the wheel. He didn't look back at the house. Didn't need to. He could still see it. The room. The space between them. How it had changed. Not because of anything he had done. Not really. He had been there. That was it. Present in a moment that needed someone who wasn't trying to fix it. Someone who didn't expect anything from it. He started the engine. The sound filled the car. Familiar. Grounded. He pulled away slowly. The house disappeared behind him. This time, it didn't feel like something unfinished. It didn't feel like something he needed to return to. It felt complete, not in a way that closed anything, in a way that let it continue without him. Marcus drove home. The city moved around him. Lights, cars, people, all the same. But he didn't feel separate from it. He parked, went inside, set his keys down, sat on the edge of the couch. The room was quiet. He didn't turn anything on, didn't fill it. He just sat there, breathing. thinking without forcing it. After a while, he leaned back, closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel like something missing. It felt like something that could hold, and he let it.